hope you've had a lovely day so far. Welcome and thank you for joining us to kickstart your career in live events. We have a wonderful panel with us here today who are going to answer some questions from me and also from you at the end. So my name's Amaarah and I'm going to be your host for this evening. This event is part of Lewisham's London Borough of Culture. Well, London Borough of Culture. Lewisham is the London Borough of Culture. And specifically the Creative Features Programme, which aims to address barriers to working in creative industries. Firstly, welcome. I would like to introduce Fiona. This is Fiona. Hello. This is Ife. This is Aliyah. And this is Nicole. Can we have a round of applause for our panel? Thank you. So, as I said, at the end there will be questions from you all. So just before we get to that, I have a few questions of my own from the panel. So firstly, can you guys just go down the line, introduce yourselves, tell us what you do?
Sure. Hi, I'm Fiona. I'm a project manager, event manager, operations manager, working across both venues and festivals. Kind of do a bit of everything, to be honest, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint what I do. So yeah, a bit of a jack of all trades, master of some.
Hi, I'm Aliyah. I run a company called Black Curatorial, but I've been working across exhibition making, live events, festivals since 2013. Mainly in Birmingham and across London. Some stuff in the Caribbean.
Hiya, my name's Ife. I work for DICE. I don't know if anyone's ever heard about DICE, but it's a music ticket. Is it working? Oh, you can't hear me? Hello, tested. Right, you can hear me now. Okay, cool. I work for DICE as a music lead, so I work across venues, festivals, and alongside promoters. And I also run what I would call a very successful event brand called DLT.
Hi guys, my name is Nicole. I'm a live events freelancer and a tour manager. Similar to Fiona, kind of live events freelancer is just more, a lot of roles encompassed into one. So yeah.
Lovely, thank you very much. To start us off, just for a bit of background about you all, it would be great to hear when you realised you had a passion for it. Did you kind of fall into this and be like, oh, I like this? Or did you actually set out intentionally to do this? You're going to go first? Nice.
I've been working in the music industry for about 7 years now. I think everyone has a passion for music in many different ways. It might be, not everyone is basically born a musician in terms of a singer, a producer, etc. So it's kind of like realizing that you can work in music via other transferable skills. You could be a project manager, for example, but you're not a singer, you're not a musician, etc. So yeah, we sort of started doing events about 7 years ago now. It was going really well, it was really successful, and then I kind of wanted to find a way to transfer the love for events and music into like a day-to-day role. That started a couple of years ago with a role at Eventbrite. As a business development manager. Essentially it's kind of like a sales exec type of role. And then post-pandemic that moved me into a role with DICE as a music lead, which is kind of like the same thing, just within a different title. But yeah, that kind of fulfills a love for passion for music, whilst working with like different people across the industry on a day-to-day basis. But as I said, I wasn't born a musician, but I work very closely with people within the music industry via work and my own brand, and yeah, it just combines into a very happy day-to-day. I don't ever really feel like I'm working, to be fair.
What did I find out was my passion? I think I'm still finding out that is my passion, to be honest with you. Like each event that we do or tour that we do, it's just like, okay, there's a new element, this is slightly better and more enjoyable in whatever aspect it is. Initially, I started off at a record label in 2017, and my main focus, similar to Ife, was like music. I wanted to just do anything in music. I didn't even know like live events was a thing in my whole career, and then I realised that the office life wasn't for me. So I kind of steered away and found live events.
So I started running events when I was at sixth form because someone came in and said that I could get extra UCAS points if I ran an event with them. So we ran that at like an old library in Birmingham, and then I started working for that company afterwards as their first ever digital marketing apprentice. So I kind of went through the route of digital marketing, but running live events, and I loved it. I was being severely underpaid the whole time, apprentices, but I just loved what you are able to see happen at a live event. You don't hear that on a record. You don't see that really in exhibitions. There was just like that moment when you gather people, it just felt like magic. So I think I was probably about 18, and then I just started doing more producer roles for different organisations working in events.
I would say, I think like my first kind of roles within the kind of creative industries in general were like publishing and like fashion like industry stuff, and so I started off my first like event kind of roles were working in like fashion week, and from there it was like loads of other just small events that I was doing, and it was around the time where I was trying to figure out what I wanted to study, and I was like, you know, I didn't want to go to like uni and do like English because I just like, I don't quite know where that's going to take me. I don't know what that progression looks like, so I wanted to do something that was a common thread in all the different things that I was involved in, and kind of landed at events being something that just popped up in all the different kind of industries that I was like operating in. And so I think once I made that decision to make that the underlying core of like my career, I was like, okay, cool, this is kind of for me, this is where I'm at, this is where I want to grow within. So yeah, it's kind of a bit of a roundabout way, but I got there in the end.
Thank you. So, Aliyah, you mentioned being severely underpaid, and which I think is something that a lot of people who are freelancers or who have gone into sort of this kind of industry will have experienced. That is quite a hurdle to get over, and I just wondered if anyone else has been through something similar or had to overcome it, or just any other hurdles in general. And how did you do it? Yes.
On the financial part of things, yes, 110%. I think, especially when you're starting out, it's number one, there aren't a lot of conversations around like what people generally get anyways, and so it's hard to figure out what, with the experience that I have, what can I like realistically charge for. So I think just those conversations are quite hard to kind of get involved in. But then I think also the more you learn, there's almost a confidence that you have to have in yourself to be like, no, actually, I'm kind of past that now. My rates are now this, and I think the more you learn, the more skills you have, the more transferable knowledge you have of like different types of work or different industries or whatever it might be. Like it warrants you being confident enough to raise your prices, and I think when you do that, it's daunting because you know it's money at the end of the day, and you know everyone's always trying to find the bargain. But the clients out there that you know are looking for people who have the experience that you have are always going to be willing to pay for that safe pair of hands. And so it almost actually comes down to where do you bring value? What skills do you have? What learning or like things that you bring into the table that is going to make your client feel that actually it's worth paying this person this amount of money because I can trust that they're a safe pair of hands. Because at the end of the day, that's what your client wants. They want someone who's going to, look after their project or whatever it is, and not have to worry about it too much. In terms of the point of like hurdles, I think for me, anyways, being like a black woman who works predominantly in like senior roles in the events industry that is predominantly white middle class men, there's always a level of like just having to somewhat like assert yourself as a person of like importance in a scenario. And I think even now I still find like situations that I'm in where people don't expect to see me as the senior person on the site, and so we'll go to like my male counterpart and be like, oh yeah, so it's what's going on here, yada yada yada, and they're like, you're talking to the wrong person, and they're almost surprised that it's me that they have to speak to. I don't know how that changes. I think after a while it's almost part and parcel of the job, and you're kind of just like, okay, whatever it is, what it is. So unfortunately I don't have like how you overcome that. It's just not necessarily to not take it personally, but just know that you deserve to be in those places even when people make you feel like you don't.
Yeah, I just wanted to say on that point as well, I come from like a very working class family, and no one in my family worked in events. They worked in like community organising in terms of like mother and toddler groups or running raves, but they never really worked as like event professionals. So I'm an asker, so I'll always ask a question. Sometimes it's an annoying question, but I found that asking loads of questions about everything was really helpful, and finding people who may be at events. I might go to an event and then find out who the organiser is. Just ask, oh, like, how did you get this venue? Or like, oh, how did you negotiate your fees? Also, if you're looking at negotiating fees, it's worth looking at APA, so the Advertising Production Association, because they have a whole card of rates, which is really useful. I was like, this is what you should be paid minimum. Because people really try and come and take you for idiot, and it's not okay. As long as you have those to back when you're asking for your fees, you can go up from there. You really determine your worth by the audience that you engage and the network that you build, and that's kind of been a way to get through hurdles. I've always run my own events, and I've always been mainly self-initiated, except if I'm working as a producer for another company, and even with then I have like a level of autonomy. So even when it does come to like those types of challenges internally, I'm probably the worst person to talk to because I'll just ask people kindly. They won't know that I've been cast, but they'll be thinking about it for a while. And I found that actually standing up for myself in those spaces meant that I was able to then become a consultant, because you provide new solutions for different things, and that's a completely different bag. But yeah, if there are problems that are stemming up internally, I wouldn't be afraid to call them out, but do come with a solution. And if they don't hear you, obviously don't run to Twitter, that's not the best way. But know that you can find people in your community who are going through similar things and kind of like talk that out.
Maybe to kind of answer the question in a way I understand, considering, you could say maybe I got into the music industry pretty late. You don't have to, like, you will always be paid. You won't ever really be paid any less in the music industry, kind of like dependent on your role. For example, if I take my company Dice, you're gonna, we will require, or we do have like a head of finance, for example, and you can imagine how much that person is gonna be earning per year. So dependent on like whatever role you have, like if you're trying to get into the music industry, you have skills, there's people that, for example, at work we have accountants, that's still considered. They are still considered working within the music industry, but you can imagine they're going to be paid according to their level as an accountant, regardless of what industry they work in. So yeah, you can get into the music industry at any age, with any previous kind of experience. It's kind of, there's always going to be roles within the music industry that what you might consider very normal compared to like everyone else's day to day, and that's just going to require you to present yourself in the best way possible, and you will be able to kind of like earn what you wish in some senses, in terms of, you don't have to, the music industry shouldn't be looked upon as one that you're going to get paid any less than anywhere else.
In terms of hurdles and how to jump and navigate it, one thing I would say is to have perseverance, and don't give up. If someone says it's a no for now. There's always another way to navigate it, or wait a certain amount of time. I think, for example, when I first started out, I think I made a list of all festivals that I wanted to work at, and I think one of the festivals I hit up directly, I was like, hey, I want to volunteer, etc., etc. And they was like, oh no, we have any positions. And I kind of just did it more like investigating, researching, and I found a production company. And I just hit them up. I didn't know at the time that they worked on that individual festival, but I just hit them up and said, look, I want to get more experience. And then in turn, they actually offered me a volunteering position within that festival that I asked for previously. So don't be disheartened if you ask someone and they say no. There's always other ways to navigate, or next year, instead of getting a volunteer position, you're going to get a paid position. So there's always going to be some sort of hurdle where it's how do you navigate it. Same with your normal day-to-day life, there's going to be hurdles and everything, but don't stop at the hurdle, either go underneath it or jump the next lane and then jump it. Don't see it as a stumbling block. So yeah.
Yeah, of course.
If you do a volunteer role, just say it was a paid position, nobody knows otherwise.
I love that. Finesse the system, people. That is so amazing. That was so great. So many gems being dropped just there. Like, what you said about there's always someone who's willing to pay you what you are worth. Like, and you determine that completely. I think that's such a beautiful thing to remember, because when I first got my first freelance job, I was like, my rate is £10.50 an hour. Because I was like, I just came out of Starbucks. I didn't know what you're supposed to be paid as a freelancer, or what you're supposed to be paid as a freelancer. So it's so cool that you were like, actually, you set your rates, and then having all those resources behind you that you can have to back it is so great as well. And that you don't need any experience, you can just head into it and always just asking the question. There's like similar themes as well. So thank you guys so much. You want to say something else?
I would just say, really quickly,
Absolutely.
you do need experience.
Oh,
I think if you're going into like particular roles, you definitely do need experience. But what I found is like just being persevering or just being proactive will go a long way if you have no experience. If you have a passion, you have a music blog, that's absolutely fine. Or like a culture blog, or like what about thing. But you need to kind of know a little bit about what you're doing, because otherwise you get loads of people coming to work in the industry who don't really care, don't really know what they're doing, and they kind of take up jobs and it kind of becomes another problem. So what's my problem? But yeah, and please have experience, or at least try.
Definitely. The key as well about what you said is that like you can make your own experience as well. Like it doesn't have to be someone going, here's an official job that you can have that you can put on your CV. It's that you can start your own music blog, or you can find ways around it similar to what you did in comms as well. So yeah, definitely. Thank you all so much for that. A bit of a lighter question now, in terms of on the opposite side of hurdles. What do you guys enjoy most about your job? What's like your favourite part of your day, week, month, or year? Is that a hard question?
Probably one of the best things about probably one of the best things about work is like every day is different. I'm allowed to do what I think is best, so I don't really have anyone telling me what to do. I kind of do what I want to do, or what I think is right. Let's just keep going. I'm kind of seen as somewhat the expert within my field, so when I'm doing what I need to do on a day-to-day, when I'm approaching or working with venues, festivals, promoters, I'm just kind of like left to it. What is good is subjective, and we operate that kind of mantra as a company. So no one's going to tell me, oh, that doesn't look good or that isn't good enough. It's kind of I just need to do the necessary to prove that it is good enough. And probably freedom to kind of like dip in and out of work in terms of what I need to do from my own events perspective as well. It's very much encouraged to be very free with that. I have unlimited holiday at work, so I don't have a cap. I take as much time as necessary, as long as obviously the job is done. So it doesn't hinder anything else I need to do outside of work, which is great. Probably considering the size of my events brand as well, I kind of do need that flexibility. So, yeah.
For me, I would say flexibility is a big thing. You don't have to report to anyone, it's just you work on your own time. If I'm up working at 2 a.m, it's because I want to, but then I can get up at 10 a.m. the following day. And also for me, mixing like touring and the events I do, I think it's rewarding to see what you produce at the end of it. So, okay, we spent 6 weeks on site, 8 to 8, but at the end of it, we've got like 15,000 people just really enjoying themselves or growing with an artist. So being on tour with them, starting out as a small cap venue, and then like 6 months later we're touring in like academies, we're going international. I think that's the most rewarding part for me, is what I say, what I love about the job.
I think mine's always been travel and freedom. I make sure that I put travel into the way that I work, whether if I'm applying for a funding bid or if I'm working with someone, if I can finesse a flight, I will. Just because I think being able to go to different countries and look at the event infrastructure there, or look at the way that they run exhibitions, or what the artists are really like doing in different countries, really inspires me, and it makes it all feel kind of worth it, as well as like talking to artists, understanding artists, and mainly visual artists. So a lot of the work that I do is within like galleries, so curating and understanding like the head top of an artist and inside their head, and like how they want to translate that. So studio visits are one of the things that I love the most about what I do.
I would say similar to Nicole, that like being able to see what you have been part of creating at the end of it is probably one of the most like fulfilling things, just being able to stand behind an arena, venue, festival, whatever, and just see hundreds and thousands of people enjoying something that you and your team have put hours and hours and hours of work into creating. It's amazing. And you could do the same show over and over and over again, but like the experience that you see the customers go through is just always a joy. There's always a first for somebody. There's always like a group of friends who you know are gonna like remember that night for forever. And so being able to kind of be part of that music community in that way, and being able to facilitate those moments, I think is like a really special thing to be part of.
Thank you. And just to pick up on something you said about having total sort of autonomy in what you create, do you ever feel as though there's some pressure behind it? I know you said that people will never say that's not good, but in terms of withholding your own standard, do you ever feel like, do you ever feel that pressure sometimes?
I've never really felt pressure from a company. I'd never really felt pressure from a company because I put like a serious amount of pressure on myself. So I could care less about what anyone says. But yeah, I guess there is, when you maintain or create high standards, you always, want to at least match that or top that with everything you do.
And would the rest of our lovely panelists agree in terms of like the pressure that you put on yourself kind of has to be there, given that you have all of that freedom, that you have to be sort of the person who keeps yourself in check?
I think so. I think with setting a standard, the more events you run, the more things you do, the easier it gets to keep doing that. It almost becomes like muscle memory. So you almost like relax into it. It doesn't feel as much pressure. Of course, new things always pop up. Like, someone might get set on fire, or someone might do a madness, or the toilets might be wild, or COVID might come and completely change the way that we run events forever. So it does keep you on your toes, but I don't think it's necessarily hard to maintain a standard when you get super comfortable with it.
Yeah, I agree, and I also think that for me it comes down to like my reputation. I don't know if that's spoken, but it comes down to like my reputation at the end of the day. So regardless of anything, I'm always going to make sure that what I'm doing is 110% the best that I can do, because that's the difference between me getting booked for another job and not getting booked for another job, right? So there is definitely an element of, yes, it gets easier the more that you do it, but like even when things go pear-shaped, being able to know that the way that I've dealt with it is equally just as much of a positive on my reputation as just something just going well.
I would like to say though that as much as you kind of set the standard, I think sometimes it's going to completely throw everyone off, but sometimes when you set the standard, I feel there's a slight bit that can hinder you, because if you set the bar this high, like for example from a touring perspective, and then someone new comes in and like, yeah, I want this, and it's a bit like, you're not really at that stage yet. We can build up, but because a lot of the time I feel in this industry people have the tendency of looking out in, and they're just like, they don't see what goes on behind the scene and all the works. They just want the top tier level. They don't understand that you have to really build yourself up to get there. Everyone wants something quick, everyone wants something now, and they want to elevate so fast. And it's just like, let's take time. Yes, I can give you this standard, but you have to be within a certain bar to be able to, for us to compatibly work together to get you there. Like, it's not just gonna happen overnight. Like, people feel like, oh yeah, but this artist, he was just on TikTok and now he's touring the world. Yeah, but you didn't know, like 2 years before that he was in the studio sleepless nights. He's gone to labels, he's been dismissed, he's had like 20 mixtapes, and only now one person has believed in him, has given an opportunity. So as much as we do set the standards, we also have to be transparent when we talk to people and be like, I can produce this if it's an event, or we can tour this, however, it's not going to look the same as whoever you're looking at. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I saw a quote one time that was, it's funny how many nights it takes to become an overnight success. And I was like, that makes sense. Because you do see that, don't you? You see a lot of things in people, you think, oh wow, you just popped up out of nowhere. But and people could probably say the same about you guys as well. They're like, I want to be where you are. But actually, you've been up at 2 a.m. doing the work. You've been like, you put in the effort. So that's a really important point. Thank you so much. And we're going to shortly open up to the audience for questions, so have some ready. But before we do so, I've got a couple more questions for you. What was your hardest lesson? Like, what was the lesson that you're like, I probably could have learned that an easier way, but it's good that you learned it nonetheless? I love when I see people start thinking after asking questions. Great. Nancy, what time are we? 26. Yeah?
Probably still today, my hardest lesson was COVID. Probably along with everyone else's, kind of have been very, very comfortable in a space or a position or a company, and then having like it all kind of taken away from you, and you know, everything put on hold, or you having to like think about things that you hadn't had to think about for years, and yeah, I guess the greatest achievement is coming out the other side. But yeah, COVID was a tough lesson.
I will actually have to second that. I think for me that period of time was also like a reminder that it's important to, like, I was lucky that because I have had loads of different experiences, when my main industry was closed down, I was able to jump into something else, and it made me just realise that it's really important to be as much of a all-rounder as possible, because you just never know when, like, who would have thought that COVID would be a thing, right? Like, the whole industry would be completely out of work. And so being able to be flexible in the skills that you have from one industry and knowing how to apply that to another proved to be something that was just really worthwhile having, because it meant that I was still able to provide for my family and, you know, have an honest living whilst this whole mad thing was happening. And so just being able to diversify the skill was definitely something that moment taught me.
I would like to third COVID. I was working as, I think I was, well done, okay. I was working as head of partnerships for an art house in Birmingham at the time, but living in London, so it was already a bit mad. And all of our partnerships, like, everyone didn't know what they were doing, everything just automatically stopped. And we had like a whole program and the launch of the space around that time, and we just had to make it all online. And like, trying to change all of that to online, you lose some of the magic, but we also met people who we've continued to collaborate with, and that space moved forward. So whilst it was a bit mad, completely new things came, because people from the States could then join, or people from Guatemala could come, and it meant that everyone who was kind of seeking that community orientated around that at that time. But yeah, it was a bit mad.
For me, the hardest lesson, I think, whatever you do, there's lessons learned, whether it's right or wrong, or you can do it better, or this event can produce slightly better. But I think I can't pick out one particular hardest one. I think it's how you learn from each lesson, to be honest with you. Is that completely like, event failed, or is it actually, we're here to have people attend, so it's not complete failure. However, next time I I would prefer if we structured it a bit like this. So yeah, I don't think I've had any like hardest lessons. I think it's just the attitude in which you look at things. Because any like what I might find hard, Fiona might not find hard, but we've done similar roles and we can just see things slightly different. So yeah, you determine what is hard for you.
Lovely. Thank you. And just like what you said as well, Fiona, about diversifying your skills is so important as a freelancer. So on that, what kind of advice would you give to someone working out as a freelancer who is maybe still kind of part freelance, like hybrid, still has to keep another job? Well, how do you balance being a freelancer?
I would say patience and be open to everything. So if you want to do events, be a marshal, be a steward, don't think like you have to be an event producer. Just intern if that's what you want to do. I know if they said don't volunteer, but don't say that. Yeah, just say it's but for real, don't be shy to it. Like even if it's just sitting in the office, if you're sitting in the office with the event producer, don't just sit there and just be like, be proactive. Be like, is there anything I can do? Like if there's paperwork on the wall, read the paper. Like, I remember when I was in Sony and I was dealing with contracts, and there was just elements. It was the same over and over again, but I just found myself like reading other parts of the contract that didn't relate to me because I just needed to know what the royalty rate was, but I'm looking at like the proper figures. I don't need to look at that, but I'm like, oh, is that how much you spent on that? Okay, that's interesting. Okay, you spent £5 on a taxi or £200 on an artist, like a makeup artist. That's not really necessary, but you get an understanding, and as we talk about transferable skills, you know that if you're booking someone for an event, and they're charging you £750 for 1 day's rate or half a day for, I don't know, shopping on Amazon or something wild, you'll be like, I think that's a bit much because I've seen something where that's not the figure. So you can just question it like, sorry, is that correct? Or what am I actually getting? Because I've seen other stuff, or if you're seeing a run of show and the show's meant to start at 10 o'clock and your security isn't arriving until 10. You can flag that and be like, well, I read, is that correct? Are you sure you don't want to stagger it? Just because you've been proactive and inquisitive rather than just sitting there waiting for someone to tell you, oh yeah, can you put this envelope in the box office? So yeah.
I can't remember what the question was.
What advice would you give to someone working as a freelancer?
I've never freelanced, but an advice kind of around the topic that I would say is never underestimate the relationships you build. You don't know where someone you had a conversation with, or someone you did some sort of volunteering for, or someone, you helped out with something. You don't know where they're going to be tomorrow, or what type of support they're going to need. And yet it could be something where, they remember you and connect with you and bring you along, or because you had a good conversation and you made a worthwhile, lasting impression, you're then able to reach out to them and they're going to be like, yeah, why not?
I'd say proactivity is super, super important. I feel like I've got most of my jobs from being proactive. If you see a problem, fixing it, or coming up with different solutions, as well as kindness. Like kindness is really, I know everyone can get really stressed sometimes and there's high pressure, but kind people will come on top, similar to what Ife just said, don't treat people like a dickhead, because they'll remember it and it will change their event experience. And also just read, just tool up, even if it's watching stuff, just learn as much as you can about as much as you can. Whether that is events, whether that is artists, whether that is legal stuff. There's so many resources online to find out the way that you can do things. Start running your own events. I'd always just tell someone to just start running. You might have 5 people at the first one, it's fine. As long as you give them the best show that you can. And don't be afraid to kind of start your own things as well, because people come to you once you start putting things out as well. So you can get jobs that way.
Basically everything everyone else has said. I think definitely heavy on the being someone who has a teachable spirit, especially when you're first starting out. I've seen people get passed over for jobs who are, have great skill but aren't the nicest person to be around or aren't the easiest person to be around. Is, you know, if you're working on a tour or, you know, in a venue where you've got like long build days or whatever, you're working with people for anything from 8 to 15, 17 hours a day. You want to be someone that people want to be around and feel that they can rely on as part of their team, and that, you know, just is someone that's going to get their hands dirty and get involved and help out. And so being that person, like, people remember that. So when the next job comes around and they're like, oh, I'm looking for a production assistant, or I'm looking for an artist liaison manager or whatever, they're going to remember you as that person who's like just been, who was just easy to work with and just happy to get stuck in. So I think that's really, really important. Yeah.
Should I say one thing as well?
Oh, that England is tiny, that there's a whole world, and that like you can really travel or find clients in different countries as a freelancer. And also, Amsterdam, for example, they pay a lot more. So look at freelance rates and what people are doing across the world, because you don't just have to work here because you live here. A lot of remote working has opened up, and we should just take everyone's coins.
Just in case you missed that last bit, Aliyah said, take everyone's coins. And I think that is words to live by. I think the kind of theme that all of you mentioned was just proactivity and not being afraid to be the person who asks the question and who goes out of your way to find new information. I love that you said having a teachable spirit, Fiona. I think that's so true. And as well, Aliyah, what you said about that, just starting. I mean, my friend and I, we started doing events in 2019 when just randomly, we ran an event called Standards at the Albany in Deptford. And we did it, and we were just like, okay, I'm just gonna do this then. And there's like 45 people there, I think. And then since then, we was able to grow it, and we had more people, and we did one in November, and there was like 120 people there. And then we've taken it to loads of different venues as well, and it's just like, things will grow, but you have to plant the seed first of all, and just never underestimate the power of sowing a seed. So thank you all so much. I hope you was taking in them gems that was dropping there. Now, it is your turn to ask some questions. So you've had enough of my voice. Does anyone in the audience have a question they would like to ask our wonderful panelists while you have their brains? Yeah? Go right ahead. Should I bring the mic or just okay to shout? Bring the mic? I'm bring the mic.
You might want to...
To be honest, it's kind of like a messily framed question, so take it. Oh my gosh, this is a terrible mic. Take it as you will, and also it's heavily loaded, so feel free to skip over it. But I understand that in this industry, workload is very inconsistent, and it can be very manic at times. And I just wonder how, in the most manic parts, how are you able to maintain your drive to keep going, or your mental well-being in general?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
Any takers? Yeah?
I would say a drive is, you have to push through, because if you don't push through and you give up, you potentially have no other work coming in. So you have to definitely push through. I would say know yourself, know when to have breaks. Like today I was saying to my friend, I started at 10 o'clock, I think I had a meeting. I logged off at 2 because I was like, yeah, that's enough for today, but probably tomorrow I'll probably go for a full 12 hours. So it's just understanding your workload and how best to manage your time but still being productive. I say from a mental health perspective and well-being, again, just know yourself. So if you've got friends and family, try to schedule that in. It's gonna get hard, and some friendships, relationships may break up, but just trying to incorporate, because as much as it is for them, it's also for you. So if you enjoy being around your family, if you enjoy going out for walks, walking your dog, plan that into your day or into your week, because it is important to have familiar comforts, or even if it's just booking a spa and you know that you're going to be working for the next 2 weeks flat out, you've got something to look forward to, or even if it's just treating yourself to something online. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll bring it round. Thank you.
I would say from someone who used to manage teams, it was was really important to make sure that like the team were as looked after as possible. And so, number one, making people feel like they can actually talk about the stresses of just the job that we're doing, because it's intense when you're on site for 15 hours a day. And that's, when I worked at Printworks, our events season would happen 9 months out of the year, and that could be anything from 1 show a week to 5 shows a week. So it's quite intense, and that's like 9 months out of the year, no weekends, no nothing off, like that's your life, and it's a lot. Similar to what Nicole was saying, it eats into your private life and the rest of it. And so I think being able to build a team that really supports each other and people feel really comfortable to talk about just the stresses and you can have a rant and be like, what is going on today? But then also being able to plan in those moments where, okay, actually you've worked, let's change the route a little bit. Maybe you take this Saturday off, maybe you take next Friday off, and just being able to try and give people back time, because it is super intense. And then just making people feel good while they are on site, because it's a long day, whether it's small treats here and there, or go into the show and enjoy it for a little bit, take off your comms and just really enjoy the show for a bit and come back into it. It's just trying to figure out the different ways that you can meet people where they're at in the midst of all the madness, because people are going to need and require different things to manage that difficult time, essentially.
I would say buy a book called Set Boundaries, Find Peace. That shit is incredible. And it also has tasks at the back. You can be like, how do you set boundaries at work and how do you set them with your family? Because I'm not even going to pretend that I have a balance. I've kind of shifted to believe in seasons. So there's a season where you'll kind of be tilting into loads of work, and there'll be seasons that are freer. So finding the space to have a little bit of a freer time, whether that's booking a holiday, saying I'm not going to look on my laptop, or only give myself 2 hours a day to do emails or whatever. But really, I think once I was okay with knowing that this is a busy season, it wouldn't let my mind get done out, if that makes sense. I would just be like, okay, yeah, because when it's done, then it's done. And I then feel super calm about it being done and it being this busy and the sacrifices that you kind of have to make for it. And then also having conversations with the people in your life. Just be like, so this is a really big period. I love you so much. But let's schedule something in for the 17th of November. And I found that really useful. And people don't hate you because they know that you're going to put in the time when you have it. And also saying, I just want to be present when I'm around family and friends and people. That became really important. But yeah, I don't have balance.
I'm not really going to answer this question because I'm really crap at setting boundaries and switching off and all that type of stuff. Yeah, send me a book. It's all a work in progress for me, so yeah, I don't really have too much to learn.
Thank you. And I think that's important as well to be honest about, is that things are going to be a work in progress. And that's okay. So thank you all for your honesty on that question. It was a really good question. Do you have another question? Nancy, you have a question? Yeah. The mic's not going to stretch that far, is it?
I just wanted to ask, how have you got your first paid jobs? What was your role, your break-in to being paid in the events?
I'll repeat it just in case anyone's here. How did you get your first paid jobs, and what was the job that broke you into the industry? Yeah.
For me, it was the one where I was volunteering. I put myself forward to volunteer at the festival. I think I was on site and they needed someone with a laptop. And I was like, yeah, sure, I have a laptop. Now my family, two of them work in IT, so there's a laptop floating somewhere. So I was like, yeah, should I get it by tomorrow? I was like, yeah, sure. And I was sending the text that I need a laptop, it needs to have Word, someone has to figure it out. And yeah, my family came through, and basically, not in a bad way, someone wasn't doing their job, and the position came up that, yeah, if you can get a laptop, he keeps on wandering off so he can basically do his job. And then, yeah, I guess I did a good job. But then, yeah, they kept me on their database and I've been working with them. I worked for them for like 4 years straight after, and the next roles were all paid, so I only did one volunteership with them. But it's the proactiveness that we've shown from the get-go, and just being like, yeah, sure, I can do that, rather than like, no, I don't have a laptop, sorry, next. And so just initiative. Like, even if you go and give someone the money to go, yeah, can you go buy me a laptop right now, and then I'll pick it up. So yeah, just proactiveness.
My first role within the events industry was for Eventbrite, so where everyone I think would have got their access to their free ticket today. And yeah, that was just kind of born out of a passion for music, events, doing my own events, and then just being able to kind of use transferable skills. So before that I worked in the logistics industry and for a number of years like an operations manager for DHL. So that gave me a certain level of management experience and people experience, but then from an event perspective, I was able to detail my connections within the music industry. My event was sold on Eventbrite as well, so there was loads of data there, and we do really well, we sell a lot, etc. So yeah, I'm a product of transferable skills, so I kind of say that a lot, that you don't have to be a musician, etc., or producer to work in the music industry. There's loads of different roles. Every kind of normal role you see, there will be that same role within a company, whether it's the record label or a music tech company or anything. Kind of use your imagination, but yeah.
So it was that same UCAS points job. I did the volunteering for that, and then I got the apprenticeship, and I was working there for a year. After I was like, I don't really like this, you guys are being a bit mad. But they offered me 3 different roles. They said you can essentially stay at the company and do whatever you want. Because I was their social media apprentice, but their head of marketing and the only person in the marketing department. It was a vibe. And then I kind of moved, I went freelance for the first time, and I think I must have been about 19. And then I was working with like different galleries, and kind of got jobs from casting out galleries for not having enough black art in them. And I got commissioned as a curator a couple of times, worked at Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery and some stuff. And then I ran my own event as well called Her Story Live, which was about bridging the gap between Birmingham and London musicians and artists and poets. So we would bring up people from London to perform in Birmingham. A lot of the time it was their first time at a live gig. And we would bring people, and then also worked like another platform called Ho Noir, which was like a black poetry and music night as well in London. So we would kind of converge those two. But it came from a lot of just like doing my own stuff. And then my first paid job was the apprenticeship. But the first proper paid job was like an adult wage, was like, I think I was 21, and I got a job at Apples and Snakes, who used to be at the Albany. Yeah. I was their Midlands producer, so I would go around all the cities in the Midlands and produce poetry events and development programs.
My first sort of big girl job in the events industry was as a project manager for a company called Production Park. And they essentially design, manufacture, and install custom stage sets from everyone from Beyonce to One Direction. So that was my first proper salary job in the industry, which was a bit of a baptism by fire, but it was also probably one of my favourite jobs I've ever had, so yeah.
Thank you. And I think on that note, if there are no more questions, anyone got any burning questions?
I do have
yes, go ahead.
You mentioned it's really important to kind of like just build up your knowledge and like read lots of sources. Would you recommend which websites or places to kind of get what would be the best way to build up that knowledge?
Absolutely. Is there like somewhere in particular, what are you interested in the event space?
I guess steering towards like festival events.
What I would do is find someone who works at a festival that you like, whether it's harass them on LinkedIn, or and try and have a conversation with them to try and get into that space. In terms of finding out how to run festivals, I've got a load of festival peoples here. All the festivals that I've kind of run, excluding the one I'll be doing next year, are like have been because people have
like come up to me because they've seen projects that I've already initiated. But I would, is it music festivals? What's the genre of music?
I guess open, but I guess, I don't know, yeah.
Just know as much as you can about it, about the artists, understand the culture, and just read up as much as you can about like festival production. Whether it's on YouTube, you can type in conversations with festival production. YouTube is literally, and it's not just the armies using it, everyone uses it. There's loads of like great resources and conversations on there. And ask people who are running festivals that you love to have a coffee. And I think the best way is kind of through connecting and asking questions one-on-one that are like super specific. And then people know that you're super proactive by asking specific questions as well.
Can I add on to that? Yeah. If you're looking to get into festivals, I would say maybe staffing, depending on how you feel. A lot of people that I've known have gone for like bar staff, not the greatest paid, not the greatest experience, but you're in the festival, so you can see how it operates, what other companies are about. There's a few companies that do like artist liaison, so you're working with the artists. So there's one called Ginger Ale Productions. There's SC Productions. I'm looking at Fiona for some help now. There are a few. There's Artist Needs. So just hit them up and be like, look, I've got these type of skills. I'm organised. I'm driven, or whatever you are, and just say you want to be able to see how your skills transferable. You want to get involved, and just people are always, especially now. I think the landscape, I don't know how anyone else feels, but I think the landscape's a lot more open up for events than they were before. I think before COVID, it was everyone's had this job for like 20 years and there's no maneuver, whereas now, that old guy that's been in the job for like 35 years, he's like, he didn't want to go back. So there's been a lot of rejig within the landscape, so people are more like, okay, cool, we need to build more staff, and events can kind of snap back, so people are like, oh what do you do? Come on board, we'll take you here, and as long as you've got personal skills, you can speak English, you can type, they'll find something for you, even if it's just greeting people to come into an event, like somewhere needs help, so don't be shy.
Can I just ask really quickly what the particular role is? Because
I guess I'm just nagging. I've done a bit of volunteering at artist liaison, and then I've got a job kind of like selling tickets at festivals, like Hideout Snowboard. But I don't know, I guess I've come from like a sales account management background.
I would say if you've got those transferable skills as well, another really good thing to look at is like production, but also go to agencies. A lot of people don't know that a lot of delivery of festivals is with agencies. They'll try and go directly to like an advertising space, but look at agencies who are doing experiential, who are doing large festivals, and see how you can get on theirs. There's loads of recruiters. I have recruiters hitting me up every day looking for people. We'll talk, it's worth having a...
Just like a bit of a black hole, like see these festivals, I'm like, who the hell?
Yeah, it's not a black hole. There's there's hundreds of companies like behind it. Look at D&AD as well. So I used to work there on their young people's programs, and they've got they have like all of the agencies who do award-winning work in experiential, or they do it in thing, and they'll categorise it. So it'll be easy to look through their catalogue to find out the campaigns or the events and festivals you've liked and who actually did them.
Fiona, do you have anything to add?
I was just going to say there are like quite a few different like Facebook groups as well. People like looking for loads of different types of roles in the industry, and I think, like Nicole said, COVID meant that we lost a lot of people. A lot of people left the industry, but the industry has also grown in the last year and a bit since we've been back. So there is a lot of work going, but those groups are really great. Even if someone posts a job that you're not really into, but if you look at what they do or the company that they work for, it might just be like, oh, I saw you looking for X person, I'm not quite that person, but if ever you need an assistant production person or whatever, I'd love to have a conversation. Like those are just like really good places to kind of hang out and just see what is happening and what people are looking for.
Just really quickly, a couple of organisations, so the Creative Mentoring Network, they put like newsletters out. I like networking, also put like roles out and stuff. Where else? There's a good list, but they're mainly like the Netherlands.
Small green shoots as well.
Small green shoots, they do stuff as well. There's quite a few people who will, be hiring at the moment. I also just checked jobs on LinkedIn. They have the most jobs than any other platform.
Now, one thing too, is there a specific area you go for events when you find those jobs?
Just type in event production or event lead, just know what the role is called or what a similar one is, and then just finesse that. Or even go.
So is it D-A-N-D, did you say?
D and AD, so it stands for Design and Art Direction.
D and A-D.
Yeah, and they have like a whole educational hub of resources.
Lovely, thank you. Was there any other questions? Yeah? This will be our final one, and then we'll have some networking afterwards as well.
That's all right, I don't need the mic. How do you safeguard yourself in this industry, i.e. exploitation? So we know that the music industry, live events industry is all about, people volunteering and being in low positions, interns, runners, all of this kind of stuff. You all have elevated throughout the years through the industry, and how do you recognise when you're being exploited in the positions you're in now, but also going back from when you began, how did you recognise that there was some sort of exploitation there, and how did you deal with that, and how would you advise someone starting out now to safeguard themselves?
Juicy question. Who wants to go first?
I'll go. Should I go?
Sure.
I think. We'll see.
Yeah, no, we'll see. I think when you're starting out, or when I was starting out, I used to say yes to everything, just because I wanted to get the experience. And so for me, it's more of a, what am I getting out of this? Okay, I might not be being paid, but is there a skill that I'm going to learn here that I can use in my next thing? Or is there a person that I'm going to meet in this situation that is going to be valuable to me going forward? And so you almost have to, because as much as as they're giving you an opportunity, you're also giving them more time, and so you have to think about what is the value exchange here. And then I think after a while, when you've done that enough times, you know that actually, I know what I'm doing here, so I deserve to be paid for this. And so it's going back to that point that I was making at the beginning around having the confidence to be like, actually, no, I'm going to charge for this now. The roles that are around volunteering, those aren't for me now. I'm ready to, look for that assistance, such and such, or whatever that next kind of level up from where you are might be. In terms of how I do it now, I can be honest and say that I have had, it's taken me a really long time to be confident to charge what I charge, whether on a day rate or if I was to go permanent, what I would look for. Again, it comes back to understanding what I bring to the table and the wealth of knowledge that I have, and also continuing to feed into that, because that's what I'm going to use for my justification to say this is my day rate, or this is what I expect to be paid as as a permanent member of staff. And so I think having those conversations with people and making people aware, whether it's not knowing the industry and what's the going rate for that role in the first place, and using that as a benchmark, but then also thinking, yeah, that's the benchmark, but I also have this, or I also have this qualification, whether it's an IOSH, whether it's accounting experience, whether it's experience with contracts, all of these other things that are going to mean that you bring more value to the role that you're doing, lean on those. And so when everyone's talking about all of those other transferable skills, it doesn't necessarily have to just be in music. What are those other nuggets that are going to be really useful in this role that you can use to bolster up yourself and not be allowed to be taken advantage of, and to be able to command a certain level of respect or finances or whatever it might be.
I was going to say, definitely been exploited. That first job, the apprenticeship, was £3 an hour. But I almost left after 6 months. I said, why? But I had to have freelance work, so God forbid. But
£10 ticket.
no, please. I was looking at Birmingham also, so less. The price of living was not what it currently is. This was 2012, 13, maybe, who knows. So exploitation is rife, but also in the music industry as well, there's like a completely different type of exploitation sometimes, and
I've seen a lot of people be very emotionally abusive in the space, and your body will feel it first. You'll know something isn't right because you'll just know. Like, I'm a huge believer that we know things that we might not be able to communicate yet. And so I think if you feel like you're being exploited, like one of my favourite thing is look at what their D&I proposals are. And if it is something that falls under that type of exploitation, know that you can use that against them. Like, always arm yourself with knowledge, and not saying like go into battle, but always be prepared to. I feel like I sound so raggy, but just also make sure that in your contracts as well you're negotiating them. I've worked with a lot of young people who go into industries and don't know that they can just negotiate your contract. That actually you can say, no, I don't want to do this, and actually I can do that instead, and actually you should double this, then plus that. And one of my friends has a disrespect clause as a freelancer in her contract. I was very glad to talk about this. But basically, if you disrespect her in any way that is like racial, sexist, etc., 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 you have to pay her money. She was like, from this England, and I'm very here for it. So add your disrespect clauses, but know you can negotiate, and your body will know if you're being exploited. Don't cuss people out on Twitter. I don't abide for that in the long run. I don't think it works, but also have a community who can support and like rally behind you, because that's more important than. I've seen people get cussed out and then nothing happens because people still protect power. So the more important question is not about the exploitation, but about the people who hold power and exploit, and how you can get rid of that. Because I think too often we expect people at entry level or people at like midway or like senior to change, when actually it's the CEOs, the people who are able to actually change a culture an organisation. But yeah, just tool up. Be ready.
Oh yeah, sorry. Did you say D&I proposals?
D&I, diversity and inclusion.
Oh, D&I.
D&I, or DE&I as they like to call it now.
Right.
Yeah, I think before you feel, words come out of my head, but before you feel exploited, I think always take a moment to realise, how do you feel exploited? Is it because they're asking you to, they really want you, but they're asking you to lower your rates? They could be asking because they love you and they just don't have a budget. So I would say at that point, negotiate with them and see what can be done. Or is it just like being rude? Because at the end of the day, everyone is working for money. So it could be that I have £1,000 to pay you, but I want to make a savings and I want to look good to my boss. So I'm going to only pay you 500. Now it's whether you say yes or no to that. And also remember, at no stage, wherever you're starting out or whether you're award-winning, you're going to get exploited. People are always going to get more for what they can give you, but you have to know your worth and how can you utilise it. So if someone wants to pay you X amount and you have to do all of this for a certain event, it may not make sense, but however, who are you in the room with? Are you in the room with some heavyweight people that you know there might be an opportunity to network and get more jobs? So normally I wouldn't take this fee, but you know what, there's going to be certain people in this room that I've been wanting to connect with, so I'm going to utilise it to my best opportunity. And who knows, you have a conversation with someone and you're now getting a full-time, salaried, holidays, all-inclusive job, just because you took a slightly pay cut than anything, but always know what you're going inside for. Like, don't ever be out of pocket, make sure that it makes sense to you. And sometimes, just put the invoice in. They might just pay. They might have a conversation. I did it last week. I just put the invoice in and they paid it. I said, okay, thank you. Because they've done wrong. They never had a conversation before to say, oh, this is what we're looking to pay you. You know your worth, so this is what I charge for this. There you go. Thank you. And also, I'm with an organisation who's setting up the Association of Black Event Professionals. So we're kind of an organisation, a community where you can bounce off of each other. So if you're feeling a type of way, or if someone said a certain comment to you and you don't know how to take it, there is that space where you can just ask, like, someone said this to me, how should I take it? And someone, like, for example, might have experienced that before, and they can tell you, like, do you know what? it's the culture. They didn't mean it potentially in this way. Unfortunately, this is what we've all been exposed to. This is how I would handle it, because sometimes we have a tendency of hearing something or seeing something and we want to fly off the handle, like, what do you mean, do this, that, and the other, and then it can have bad repercussions. Whereas if you just say, okay, I'm going to pause that, I'm not going to fall into the scope that you want me to, and then next week, yeah, you know the comment that you said last week? I didn't actually appreciate it, and by you confronting that, it's going to change a whole different situation.
Can I just say something really quickly as well? Like, have your receipts, so make sure that's on the email.
I was going to add, like, kind of, I don't know how old everyone is in the room, but kind of, I think the youth of today kind of really forget that hard work beats talent. So there's a fine line between exploitation and hard work. I think there's still a crazy amount of value in working extremely hard, and it won't be forgotten, it won't be missed. It may somewhat seem at exploitation at the time, because you may feel you're not being paid what that level of work might deserve at the time, but you know, if you are putting in the hard work, it will be noticed, you will be noticed, your personality will come across, and yeah, it'll be rewarded in the end. So yeah, it's just like there's a very fine line between exploitation and hard work, but hard work, there's an extreme amount of value in it.
Thank you so much. It seemed like as well what you were saying is that like money isn't the only currency, and that there is experience, there is connections, there are all of these things that you can also gain. So it's also just about being like, what is the benefit of this thing in particular? So thank you for that. That was a good reminder as well, because you do have to work hard, and it doesn't become up to you to be like, okay, actually, I did that before for that rate, and maybe that was correct at the time, but it's not anymore. And that's okay. Yeah, no, yesterday's rate is not today's rate. And it's different. And that's fine. You grow and you learn. Yes, absolutely.
Well, mates rates, they're great for my actual friends, but just because we talk on social media doesn't mean
they're not my friends. Yeah.
And just being aware of over familiarity when you run events as well, because that does pop up.
Yeah, that's across the board as well, especially when you're a freelancer, because you will get people who you are familiar with asking you to do jobs and being like, oh, you're going to charge me full price. Yes, I got to eat too. So yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. Yeah, of course.
Just a quick one. The majority of people here are women, all right? And you want the panel to be like strong women. How do you, back to your question, how do you, as individuals, to the women, how do you protect yourself from unwanted advances? And for the men, yeah, so I'm not leaving you guys out, how do you ensure that your female, even male to be fair, are also protected from unwanted advances, things like, unwanted attention? How do you protect yourself, guard yourself from that? Where can you go? What do you do?
That's a great question. Fiona, you want to say?
Oh, say from a venue point of view, I'm very lucky that the main venue or the main organisation that I work with take sexual assault, sexual harassment very seriously, and so that has just been something that we have trained, not just our events team, but our entire wider team that's trained, from bar staff to security, to know how to handle those things. And I think the fact that it's not just on me as a woman to report something, knowing that there is a wider system in our organisation that just doesn't tolerate it, is so much, it lifts such a weight off of not just myself, but the entire other women in our staff as well. And so I think just being able to, there are various different trainings out there that organisations can partake in, but having those conversations. And I think, I don't know before COVID, I work mainly in nightlife, right? And so I think the experience of women being taken advantage of in those spaces is rife. And I think after COVID, and I don't know if it was the unfortunate murder of Sarah Everard or whatever it was, but there were the reports of certain things happening on the dance floor just increased so much more, and so we knew that we had to be prepared for that. We knew that we had to make sure that everyone was aware of how we looked after those people in those situations, from taking statements of who the person was to, you know, if someone has said that they feel like they've been drugged, being able to test their drinks that they have. Like, not every organisation is going to have the resources to do that, but having something in place where people can feel, where women can feel safe to bring those situations to people's attention. I know that they're going to be taken care of and that they're going to be believed, for me has been incredible, to be honest. And it means that, you know, you can't stop it. I've had situations where people have copped a feel here. Like, we often do like walks through the crowd with my big security guards, and people are still just being funny, and it's just like, what is going on? And so to know that I've got teams around me that are just all going to stand for that is, yeah, really, really helpful.
Sam, Jamaican. And I don't know how else to kind of say it. I've never felt uncomfortable cussing people if something like that arises in the moment and in the time. And I've always been taught to do that and to protect myself in that way. It happens all the time. And I've also walked off of jobs because of that, those same reasons, because someone in a position of power will try and exploit you and move in that way and think it's okay. And then you have a load of different people within a company who don't really know how to do it, can't really say anything because that's a top boss. And you're then in this sticky situation. Leaving a job has never been an issue for me. I will leave because I know something better is always coming. And that's kind of the way that I see it, that if I can't maintain my space in that culture or in that company culture, then this job just isn't for me. If that person's not going to be reprimanded, if I can't cuss them out or use like legal means to do so, then I'll just go because that's more important to me. And also I used to teach DE&I for like major organisations like Facebook in Silicon Valley and all of those like their major bosses, and like Global Witness in different countries. And a lot of the times when these things happen is because there's a deep lack of knowledge of how to treat people as people, especially if you are attracted to them, how to like have that within a workspace that is boundaried and comfortable, etc., etc. And also sometimes men just feel like they can just take what they want. And so it is rife, it does happen all the time. I would say that like the girl don't always pull through. So groups of women within organisations will always rally together. This is kind of why I've got my own business now, so I can kind of do what I want. Well, this isn't why in particular, but to have that autonomy, to be able to be the person who can do whatever or cuss out whoever and set the culture is more important than trying to fit into one that will always hate you for being a woman.
From a male perspective, kind of my event brand, there's 12 of us as a company now, so only about 4 women and 8 males. So it's like, you know, we undertook training where we call it certified by the good night out. So we understand kind of like, you know, what to look out for, how to handle certain situations. For all our events, we have like a process or protocol called Ask Angela. So if anyone, it's like a code word, if like anything's happening or anyone feels uncomfortable, you know, once you kind of, you say that, you know, at a bar or to a steward or to anyone kind of that's part of the event team, then you know, we know how to kick into action and what to do next. So yeah, I think the overriding thing is just training and then understanding that these situations may happen, unfortunately. But I guess somewhat of the healing process is how to handle it as quick as possible and hopefully rectify it if possible.
I would say sometimes you can feel very lonely in the industry, and I think it's important to be able to build a family, like a working family, but not just like someone that I see every day, oh yeah, but really close, but really someone that you can kind of have an unrelated work conversation with and just explain like, look, this has happened, and you kind of know and trust them that it's not going to go everywhere, they're not going to go and talk to the next person about the situation that's happening, but they can kind of give you advice, whether it be from a female perspective or from a male perspective. And if you have that kind of little safe haven, that hub with the people that you're working with, they will also look out for you and protect you. So if they're in a conversation or in a room where something might be inappropriate, they said, they'll be the ones quick to jump in, because that's your immediate kind of work family, but also not work family, if that makes sense. Like, they've got your back, so always try to, even if it's just 1 or 2 people, I would say, yeah, definitely community, someone that you trust can talk to is important, because trying to probably deal with something by yourself is not good, it's not the best way. So always try and have that one person, or even if it's someone that you don't work with, but they work within the industry, because trying to explain something that might have happened to someone that doesn't work in the industry is long, it's just hard, it's just, they're going to give you their advice, but they work in the corporate world, and they're like, yeah, talk to HR. We don't have HR in the events, like, unless you're working for an organisation, if you're a freelancer, there's no HR, you are everything, your HR, your medical, your holidays, your everything, so build your own little remits.
Thank you. The overarching theme of that was that it's just not always a responsibility of the woman. Like, there has to be a team of people around, and the more people are aware and the more people are proactive, it's going to help. And also what you said earlier as well is just like, pick your battles. Like, sometimes you're just going to have to be like, bye then, that's okay, something better will come, and you don't have to hold on to everything, because you just have to protect your peace at the end of the day, and I think that's so important. Yeah. Did you have something else you wanted to say, Aliyah?
No, I thought I did know. I was like,
cool. And on that note, we have reached the end of this panel talk. So thank you all so much for being here. We do have this space for another like 15-ish minutes, 10-ish minutes. So stick around. Speak to people, network, speak to each other as well, grab some LinkedIns, because we love new LinkedIn connections here, and ask any more questions as well. Also, if you could please support Borough culture by speaking to one of our staff, there's Liam and Nancy over there, who, about your experience, so then they can, feedback is always helpful. Also, you can sign up to the Creative Futures programme if you're over 16 for more opportunities like this. During this year, there's so much stuff happening. Like, seriously, look it up, it's great, there's a lot of good stuff. And last but not least, thank you so much to our panel for your time. Thank you so much. It has been so great to have this conversation with you all, and there's been so much learning, and if you lot have learned a smidgen of the amount that I have learned, you've learned a lot. So thank you all so much for being here. Have a fantastic evening, everyone.